Hello, hello. So I am kind of going into a little bit of a rant, a little bit of a uh, exploration, I guess, of what is possible in Bitwig in terms of optimizing your workflows, optimizing your shortcuts, and specifically on Mac. But any of these most of these things can probably be applied to other platforms. I originally used Bitwig on Windows. I switched over to my M1 Mac because I like being able to kind of on the go take my projects on my laptop. Um, but all of these things apply. One sort of unique thing about this right now is that I am using a trackpad, and I don't typically use a trackpad when I'm uh, using Bitwig. So this is a little bit new for me. And I'm going to dive in and just kind of talk about what I think like the trackpad offers, um, which is a little bit different. So the trackpad, like the first kind of obvious thing is if you move your two fingers around, you can kind of do like a two-dimensional panning. If I go to my mouse, I have my mouse plugged in here too. Usually you do this with middle click. I can go back and forth, or I can go up and down to zoom, or I can scroll to go up and down. But on a trackpad, I can just do this, and then I can use pinch to zoom. I think the trackpad wins that motion out for me, but I'm still not as exact at like clicking on things and finding things and clicking on them. Just a little faster with the mouse, but this is an experiment. The other interesting thing about the trackpad is, let's start a new project. So we have this project. Let's activate the audio engine. One interesting thing is that there's other things you can do with like long pressing. So if I long press, I insert a clip. If I go into this, if I long press, I insert a note. It's pretty interesting. If I use the pencil tool, I can long press and draw notes. So that's just one thing. Usually it's things that would be like normally like a double click kind of thing. The other thing you'll notice is that I actually have a little indicator here on the left that will show what my key combination is. So for example, I want to show you how to hide the launcher, because I don't use the clip launcher usually, so I'm not really going to talk about that. But L focuses it. You hit it another time, it goes away. And that's true for anything in the interface. So I'm going to kind of go into that now. Like, what is the anatomy of Bitwig? So like there's the launcher and the arranger, right? I'm going to focus on just using the arranger, which is O actually, focuses the arranger. And when you defocus the arranger, it has to open the launcher, so that can get a little confusing. Just hit L a couple times. The other things that can be in the center view, you can get through with tab. So you can get the mixer and the arranger, you toggle between them, and then shift tab will give you the detail editor view, which I'll go into in more depth in a minute here. But hit tab a couple times, you'll always get back to the arranger. And then on the left, you have the inspector. The inspector is sort of the additional details for anything that you've clicked on. So if I click on a track, I get details about the track. I get additional options. I get additional information. Things that are not exposed always in other views will be exposed here. It's super, super important. But that being said, sometimes I do like to hide it. So I use I to toggle it. and I can also click here, but I just like to use as many shortcuts as I can. So on the right, you see the browser. I don't really use that browser that much unless I'm pulling out audio clips. Usually I use the contextual like pop-up menu, which for example, if I go here, like if I click D to open the device view, and I'll talk about more of that in a second, but like this bottom row, there are different views you can have. And so sometimes I like to open the browser that way, but there's also this browser, and I don't use it that often. So I'll usually option hide, option B to hide it. So there's that. So yeah, this bottom view, very important. I don't always like that visible either. So again, if I hit the device view twice, it goes away. There's other things that can be there though. So if I hit A, that gives me automation. If I hit E, that gives me a detail editor. If I hit D, that gives me the device view again. If I hit M, that gives me a little mini mixer. But anytime I press these twice, it goes away. So, I can get a lot of screen real estate just hiding everything, which is pretty cool. Another really awesome thing is shortcuts. So shortcuts are very important. I've already showed you some, just contextual showing and hiding of things. But for example, say I want to reverse this clip, I can just hit Control and return, and I can go to reverse. Now, reverse is not normally set up by default. You have to actually add this into your shortcuts, but I highly recommend you do, because just being able to hit R is really nice. But you can also, if you don't have something mapped, you can just go to it here, click it, press enter, or search for it and press enter, and then it's done. So, but here we have under settings, you can go to shortcuts. You can reverse. There's also reverse pattern. I don't have that, but I don't use it that much. So another thing that I didn't know for a long time, I'm actually going to hit option B to open the browser again. And I'm going to find a drum loop of some sort. Yeah, whatever. Just pop a drum loop in there. So reverse also works on that, by the way. So another thing that's really handy is if you look at the bottom, you always get like a contextual menu of what kinds of things you can do. One thing I didn't even really realize for a long time was the resize all thing. I just like being able to do this and pop open all of my clips in like a more detailed view. I think it's super handy. So anyways, I have a drum loop. Let's get rid of these. And let's double that. Actually, let's take this. Let's add a new clip here. I actually have a command shortcut set up that it can stretch or shrink by 50% or 200%. I just have that mapped out, so it's kind of handy. But I did want to say, so here's another shortcut, by the way, Shift left, just select the next thing to the left. Then I hit Command L, that puts the loop on it. Now, what if like my screen is off center? What if I want that to be shown? I'm gonna hide the browser for a second with Option B. So I can hit Z. Oh, I'm not actually focused on here. So if I hit O again, I can focus the arranger. But if I hit Z, that centers my zoom on what I have selected. So another thing you can do is you can double tap. This is Mac specific with a touchpad, but you can double tap with 2 fingers and that will zoom. So I'm double tapping, but it's the same as Z basically. So I'm just going to dive into audio editing because I think audio editing is the most interesting part of Bitwig. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. I think there's a lot of options to it. So if I have this loop, I have these 2 loops. There's just so many things you can do. I mean, so many different ways you can slice and dice and mess with your audio. So you can do everything from the arranger view. And I think that's sort of the classic like Ableton way of doing it and grabbing your hits and slicing it up and putting them on certain spots. Or you can do everything within a clip by slicing within the clip. I like to slice within the clip, but I want to kind of show you some things you can do. So for example, you have these 5 different tools, which are 1 through 5. So 3, or let's say 5 is the knife. So one interesting key combo you can do is Option and then drag, and it will slice based on your current grid. And I have adaptive grid on, so if I zoom out a little bit, it only slices that much. So I have this little loop. Let's say I've got all these slices. I want to rearrange them a little bit. So I can take some of these, I can shorten them. I can duplicate this. If I hold Alt, I can stretch this. I can duplicate this. I can reverse this and then duplicate it. If I hit left or right, I can select different clips. And then I can do my little stretching or shrinking, duplicate that. Hit Shift left to select 2, duplicate that. So there's a lot of different shortcuts that you can use to do all this stuff, which I think is super handy. But let's say that now these are all kind of mixed up. So I want to be able to deal with just a clip like this. I mean, so one thing I can do, for example, is if I go into a more detailed audio editor, and I go to track mode, I can actually see both my clips here. I could just do this, select all of these. That's not really letting me. I could copy them into this clip. Just kind of a weird way of doing it. But I could do that, but there's way easier ways to deal with all this stuff. So let's undo that. Let's undo that. I just wanted to show off this feature that you can drag audio events between clips. But if I go here and I was to hold Shift, click the other one to grab this entire section, I can hit Command J and I can join them together. But I don't have to jump between the arranger to do this either. If we go back to the view I was in, I can select the actual clip headers up here. And I can Command J there. So that's one thing that's really nice. And then let's say I don't want to see all of this either. I know that this is what I want, and we can even just loop this section. Okay, let's say I love how that sounds. I don't want to see all this stuff. If I want to slice it later, I can, but I'd rather this be one audio file. So you can actually just Command B, bounce this clip in place. Because I have this clip selected, because I have in this track context, it's now bounced in place. So now I have this whole thing. So being able to sort of like switch between these two clips is really nice, left to right, but there's better ways to do that. And so this is another like workflow thing I think is really cool. Let me select both of those clips. They're selected. As you can see in this view, they're still selected. Let me zoom out. And if I click this little button in the left, this is layered editing mode. So I'm actually going to go into clip mode. And I don't know what glitched out there, but based on what I have selected, if I select more than one, I can see them both side by side. So if I hit Shift Tab again, let me make sure I'm looping around both of them. Okay. So let's say I want to take certain hits out of this one and put it in here. I can use layered editing mode to kind of do that. So I have this whole thing. Let's say I want this section. I can hold Option, and that copies. If I just drag without Alt, it pulls it out and it automatically slices. Like I don't have to pre-slice this. Like I could have gone like this and then hit Command E to slice, then copied it out or pulled it out. But you don't have to do that. So I really like this sort of methodology to things. The other really cool thing about this, I'm going to get out of layered editing mode and delete this. I'll just duplicate this. Actually, let's do a fresh loop here. So let's jump into here. So another thing I really like about the editing is like, let's say I want to do different edits within this clip. You know, like I said earlier, you can kind of do this slicing like that, or I can do like a slice in place and use like onsets, for example, or beat markers. We'll just use onsets. So this is pretty much in time, but you know, each one of these audio events has its own set of interesting settings. So I can select all of them and I can change them all at once if I want to. So I can change the mode to like Elastic Pro or something like that. Or I can up the pitch a little bit. But another cool thing you can do is like, say I want to go into slice mode or cyclic mode. And there's so many interesting characters to all of these different modes. So like you hear this one, it sounds totally different. So if I hold Option to kind of pull out and do a stretch on this, there's all of this extra character to it. So let me go into formant mode. So if you notice, it says formant controls grain length. So on its own, the formant stretching in this, or the formant expressions in Bitwig are pretty cool, especially on vocals and things like that. Let me use Option to draw a curve on this. But like, listen to that. That's awesome. So sort of on that note, there's also this thing called operators. You've probably heard of all of this, but just wanted to jump into it because I think it's kind of interesting. Like if I want to add repeats with operators, I can do that too. So I can go here, go into my operator, add repeats. Oops. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, yeah. I can add repeats, and I can do that kind of exponential effect on that too, which is pretty awesome. And I can even slice based on those operators. So if I do slice at repeats, now I have all of these little repeats. And right, if I hold shift and I have all these selected, I can change the length of them all at the same time. I might want a little fade out on all of them at the same time so I don't get those clicks. Which I'm having trouble selecting at the moment, but because I need to go in audio event view. So yeah, if I do that, I can fade them all out. Gosh, I mean, there's so many other things you can do with the editor, but I'm not going to go into everything. But yeah, the formant stuff is really cool. Like you can make all kinds of crazy noises. I mean, if I get like a vocal loop and change the formatting with formant envelopes with like Elastic Pro or something like that, it's pretty cool. Like pretty cool sounding. Like, you know, you don't need little altar boy to do this stuff. You can use Elastic Pro format controls in the audio editor. It's pretty cool. What else? I think automation's also a little bit misunderstood. I think I need to understand it better, but if I go, you know, say I want to adjust the volume of this, let's say pop up an automation here. So let's loop these two. And I have this automation going from here to here. And I'm going to turn off this automation follows clip editing. I just want this to stay with the track. But even when I do this, there is a way to have clip-based automation. So if I go here and I hit A, I don't know why I'm having trouble with the commands right now. I have caps lock on? No. But let's say I go into the automation. So if I take the automation here, there's also these other automation modes, the plus and the multiply. So the plus and the multiply can be tied to the clip. So I can take, let's take the drawing tool, because I think this is a useful way of automating. So let's say I want to repeat this a couple times. Let's go to the selection tool, highlight some random thing, Command D to duplicate. Okay. Let's use the erase tool to smooth that out. Let's Let's delete that. Delete those points. So I have this. And then I also have this kind of, let's just put that there. So I have a multiply. So what that does is it adds to the existing like main automation line, which we can see here. It adds its own sort of spin on it. So how can I actually see what that result looks like? You can kind of see it here. So I don't know if this is like glitched out or something, but if I go to this view, I can see it. So the kind of blue line in the background here shows the actual result of all three of those automation lanes effects on each other. So this isn't really a workflow tip as much as like there's other things in Bitwig that aren't so obvious that can be pretty useful. So again, this is sort of a freeform video. I'm not really sure where I'm going with all of this. Yeah, what else? So I think it is definitely interesting everything you can do with Bitwig. So let's copy this again. I want to show off one last thing. So an interesting thing is that there are these nudge commands that are available in the audio editor and the piano roll. So if I look at this clip that I've just duplicated and I hit E to open the editor, and then I have the keyboard mode on. No wonder it's okay. So I hit E to go to the editor, and let's do Command A. So I select everything, but I don't actually want to select everything. I just want to select one thing. But immediately, if I press left or right, it moves it. So when it's in this context, it actually moves by one bar every time you hit left or right. If I hold Option, now I'm selecting an individual hit. So if I've selected this hit, or this audio event rather, then I can move that individually by one bar. Or if I hold Shift, I can move it by a smaller amount. So that's really useful, especially when you just want to make a quick little shift left or right. Just remembering you can hit those arrow keys is kind of cool. I wish I knew about that earlier. I'm just kind of picking all of these little things up as I learn how to use this software more and more. If I look at like a piano roll track, let's go into a larger view here. Let's close device view with D. Okay. So I'm still not in love with the piano roll here. I kind of wish there was a setting, for example, to always start at a small thing with the pencil tool so that I could sort of draw starting small every time, but I'll get used to it. But let's say I want to move these around. I can still do this. I can still do left and right, up and down. If I hold Shift, I can do it by octave. If I hold Alt, I can jump between these events. Or sorry, Option. If I do Option Shift, I can select multiple events, which is very nice. So another kind of workflow thing to explore. A lot of the things that you can do with audio events, you can do with MIDI events as well, right? Operators. and I can do, again, I can split this at the repeats and turn them into actual notes that I can then do whatever I want to. Or I can consolidate them again. I thought I could. Maybe I can't. Probably can't. But yeah, hopefully this is an interesting set of ideas. Definitely curious if anybody knows anything else I should cover in this area. I'm probably going to do more in-depth like audio editing, more in-depth workflow, more in-depth about my mental model in Bitwig. But this was just sort of an experimental rant to see if I could generate any ideas or anything I should talk about here. So definitely let me know, what are your favorite shortcuts, your favorite workflow hacks in Bitwig. I didn't even really touch on like actual sound design or like the device view or any of that stuff because I really kind of believe in the solid foundation of understanding like the audio editing and all of that and the MIDI editing and getting really proficient with that before you even go crazy with, device view. But another thing I should mention, if you want like a really small view of your tracks, turn off the large track height button. But I don't know. I like to see the waveforms. I like to see what I'm working with. So I hold shift and I drag. Again, just understanding the context of like why you want the inspector. The inspector is so useful for so many things. Also, all of the Bitwig devices have their own inspector, extra options, super useful. Another thing I should mention is if I go into settings, user interface, I have this kind of scaled up for this video, but all the dual display things are pretty interesting to mess with. You can't see my second monitor, but often I will use some of the other versions. Like I think I usually use the studio version of the dual display. These are just presets. You can't really customize them beyond that, but the hitting tab, all of the different shortcuts for opening the different windows work in these views. So it's really worth learning the shortcuts because they sort of intuitively work in all of these different contexts. So definitely curious if there are any comments. One thing I am wondering about, maybe somebody watching this video can answer. When I talked about nudging, it says that I can nudge events 1 bar forward, 1 bar backward. It doesn't work. And it's an opposite, completely opposite, like binding. So left and right normally nudge when I'm in the editing view, right? But when I'm in the arranger, left and right select. So it's just definitely interesting to dig in and figure out what all of the different options are for workflow, because I think this can be really, really fast. One other thing I should mention here. So another thing that I've done, another custom shortcut I have is, let's say, this is my original and I don't want to hear it, but I still want it to be laying around so I can reference it later. If you watch like Ableton tutorial videos all the time, you will see people enabling or disabling their clips with 0. I've gone ahead and I've mapped that to 0 myself just so I can replicate the same workflow. If you go into shortcuts, toggle active. That's what it is. So this works in all contexts. You can do it in devices. So I'm going to hit B to open something. So if I hit 0, I can toggle active on that. That's actually different than this, enabling a device. I don't 100% know what the difference is. Oh yeah, this is bypass versus active. So that's another useful thing. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up now because I think I'm just at this point rambling a little bit too much, but I hope you learned something. I hope you maybe have some ideas for how to improve your own workflow. These are all things that I very slowly picked up over time watching videos, reading the manual, trial and error. Some of these things are not well documented, but hopefully you enjoyed this video, and please comment and let me know what you liked and didn't like. So I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.